le Cheikh Anta Diop de la génération actuelle, ce que nous aurions changé pour que cette éducation cadre avec les aspirations du savant sénégalais, nous aurions modifié premièrement le niveau, la façon d'étude, madame. Au niveau des langues, nous devrions promouvoir plus nos langues étudiées dans l'Afrique antique. Car actuellement, nous sommes presque totalement focalisés sur l'étude des langues étrangères, des langues des colons. Nous aurions pu faire un détour sur les langues que nos ancêtres utilisaient auparavant pour mieux promouvoir notre culture. Car comme il a défini la culture comme étant l'expression de l'âme d'un peuple, nous devons essayer de faire revivre cette âme-là, cette âme de l'Afrique antique, en promouvant plus nos langues et en intégrant à la fois le savoir-faire et le savoir-être.
Je pense que si j'étais le Cheikh Anta Diop, n'est-ce pas, c'est que peut-être ce qu'il nous reste à faire, je pense, c'est d'abord de développer des programmes éducatifs, n'est-ce pas, qui intègrent les contextes culturels, économiques et sociaux. Vous êtes en train de prendre quand même des notes, n'est-ce pas? Oui. Spécifique à chaque pays, cela implique de repenser carrément les contenus et les méthodes d'enseignement. Il faut les repenser pour qu'ils soient pertinents et applicables à la vie quotidienne des Africains. Il faut ça. Il faut même déjà intégrer vraiment et franchement nos langues locales dans les enseignements. Il faut intégrer nos langues locales dans les enseignements, surtout ceux d'éthique, n'est-ce pas? On peut aussi enseigner, puisque c'est la mondialisation, non? Oui, nous sommes dans le contexte de la mondialisation. On peut aussi enseigner l'informatique. On peut trouver des noms, c'est-à-dire des contenus informatiques en nos langues. N'est-ce pas? Donc, c'est tout ça. Il faut changer. Et puis,
merci, monsieur le président.
S'il vous plaît, Partie. Mais comme c'est le groupe test, on va permettre à monsieur le censeur coordonnateur de poser une question. Mais avant sa question, je voudrais rappeler au candidat que la réponse à la question, je pense, sauf si je vous ai mal lu, de Madame Tipé, se trouve en page 9. Où vous avez parlé d'une physique africaine, d'une mathématique africaine, d'une philosophie africaine et que sais-je encore. Donc vous avez la réponse à sa question sous vos yeux. Monsieur le censeur, je vous en prie.
Bien, ma question est très simple. Après avoir exposé sur le thème éducation, qu'est-ce que cela vous apporte?
Le thème que nous avons développé, qui a déjà été mentionné auparavant, qui est intitulé l'éducation dans l'Afrique noire précoloniale pour une appropriation de la pensée de Cheikh Anta Diop. Je vais d'abord pour répondre à votre question, je vais commencer par définir ce que le thème éducation, le mot éducation. L'éducation.
Monsieur Ndoulepa, qu'est-ce que vous gagnez après avoir travaillé sur un thème comme celui-ci? Ce que vous gagnez sera automatiquement ce que ceux qui vous ont écouté et qui vous écoutent encore gagneront. Soyez concis et précis.
Après avoir travaillé sur le thème éducation dans l'Afrique noire précoloniale pour l'appropriation de la pensée de Cheikh Anta Diop, il nous a permis de repenser aux méthodes utilisées auparavant dans l'Afrique précoloniale.
Les valeurs en matière de transmission des savoirs dans l'Afrique actuelle.
Vous pouvez retenir.
Nous pouvons retenir que nous devons promouvoir les valeurs et les sens. Nous pouvons promouvons les nouvelles valeurs et transmettons les savoirs dans l'Afrique actuelle.
Members of jury, good afternoon. Today we shall witness a presentation of the book Cheikh Anta Diop, Civilization of Barbarism and Authentic Anthropology, where these candidates have taken time to read and come out with a theme from this. This theme, according to them, that we shall appreciate now, is African culture and civilization, an introduction to modern society. African culture and civilization, an introduction to modern society. We have as candidates Ngeka Blessing, Kaneko Koye Gabriel, Isonga Emanuela, and Pomo Zidane Asaba. You'll be given 15 minutes for your presentation, and the rest of the 15 minutes we'll use for exchanges. You have the floor.
The theme of our expose is African culture and civilization, an introduction to modern society. I'm going to start by defining civilization. Civilization can be defined as a change in the socio-cultural way of living in a society into a modern way, while barbarism can be defined as the absence of culture and civilization. Normally, Cheikh Anta Diop book is divided into 4 parts: part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. My colleague here, Fanye Emanuela, is going to be exposing in part 1. Zidane is going to be exposing the part 2, while Gabriel is going to be exposing part 3, and I will finish with part 4, and Zidane will give the conclusion of the book. Thank you.
My name is Anta Emanuela. We can't actually talk about the book Civilization and Barbarism without talking about Cheikh Anta Diop's biography. Firstly, Cheikh Anta Diop was a politician, and he was actually an anthropologist. He studied African culture, and he equally based himself on the pre-colonial African culture. Cheikh Anta Diop was born on the 29th of December 1936 and died on the 7th of February 1982. And within these 62 years, Cheikh Anta Diop studied the African culture. His study was known as the theory and the foundation of Afrocentricity. I'm going to base my focus on part 1. Part 1 bases its focus on the origin of humanity and some scientific discoveries of Dr. Louis Lequet. Dr. Louis Lequet states that there are 2 factors that have not clearly been centralized and written in the book of the world. He says this first: the origin of humanity was in Africa, and precisely in East Africa. He places the origin of humanity in Africa precisely. Point 2, he believes that this point has not been completely articulated in history. The second point was that all other races are derivatives of the blacks. Therefore, any other race that came into existence was as a result of the black race. By referring to the ancient work of art, carving and paintings that were found in East Africa, he was able to let us know that the first black who went out to populate the rest of the world was known and seen through the Strait of Gibraltar. Dr. Diop is equally by all his agencies to show us what we are. And Dr. Diop equally lets us know that with science, science is able to uncover the history of the world that has become willingly and written in textbooks. Dr. Diop equally talks about the ideology of Europeans. This ideology states that they actually deny the race of Africa. They deny the fact that civilization started in Africa. But with the help of Cheikh Anta and his writing, we are able to clearly know that civilization started in Africa and precisely in East Africa. Dr. Diop equally helps us know that Dr. Diop equally helps us know that the first inhabitant of Europe was a man known as the Grimace man. We could equally call him the Campbell man. When Dr. Diop talks about science, he's ready to bring out all the facts to show that civilization actually started in Africa. This is seen through the own process, which he states, I quote, "What is done in the dark will soon be seen in the light." And this is what is equally happening today. They deny that civilization started in Africa, but today we are able to see that civilization started in Africa.
Greetings to you all, ladies and gentlemen. I am by name called Pumbo Zidane Asaba. My part in this book of Cheikh Anta Diop is part 2, talking about the evolution of societies. The evolution of societies can be subdivided into clanic and tribal organization. Clanic and tribal organization, structure of kingship at the city and tribal states, race and social classes in Africa, particularly Egypt. I will go straight to the point, starting with the clanic and tribal organization. In Africa, particularly Egypt, the city of Mogadishu was very civilized, containing organized cultural systems. In these systems, the Portuguese were in search of raw materials in Africa, of which they never founded these materials in their home country where they are today. They found these raw materials in abundance in the eastern part of Africa in Egypt. These resources included gold and ivory. They were jealous of the abundant resources found in this city of Mogadishu. In this city of Mogadishu, the Portuguese, since they were jealous, they came and conquered the city of Mogadishu. As a result, they destroyed houses just to exploit the resources to their home country, making it to come out with modern things and come together back in Africa and claim to us that their country is the origin of civilization, which is a big lie. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to go further. The most shocking part of it is that, ladies and gentlemen, despite the Portuguese conquest of the Swahilis, despite the Portuguese conquest of the city of Mogadishu, the city of Mogadishu, their culture and practice are still existing, and they are still practiced up to date. Ladies and gentlemen, this means that this city of Mogadishu was very civilized. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, I will move to the structure of kingship and tribal state. Structure of kingship and tribal state involves family life in Africa, particularly Egypt. In Africa, there include families that involve the parents, that is the two couples, their children and their grandparents. Sometimes the brothers and sisters of the couples are African society. Family means that all the members of the African society come together as one in peace and up to date it is still practiced. This means that the members of the African society are together in unity and in love. It means that city of Bangladesh was civilized. I will move finally to the race and social classes. In Africa, particularly Egypt, there exist three major race and social classes. That is the upper class, the lower class, and the middle class. In the upper class constitute of royal families, rich landowners, doctors, and merchants. The middle class constitute of manufacturers and other doctors. The lower class constitute of unskilled laborers who mostly work on farms. Even slaves that were from foreign countries deposited in Africa around Sierra Leone were given the right to own personal items, personal properties, which was deprived from them by the Europeans. But in Africa, that was accepted. It means that our country, Africa, was civilized. Ladies and gentlemen, please let the Europeans not deceive us that civilization originated from Africa, because even the first migrants to Europe was a black. This means that civilization began in Africa. I will hand over the floor to my mate Gabriel Ash to continue with the part 3. Thank you.
Yes, please, the audience is advised to follow up the debate.
Greetings to you all, honorable members of the jury. I am known by name Kamneko Fouye Gabriel, a student of the lower 6th art class. If I am present here today, it is to express my ideas about the Partie of the book Civilization and Barbarism, which comes as thus: how to define cultural identity. This chapter is all about. This chapter focuses on whether to know if the Africans has a cultural identity or not. According to the Europeans, Africa is just an exploitative continent which depends on European and Asian countries such as France and China. European countries such as France say that civilization began in Europe, which is false. I will then demonstrate to you the different ways by which cultural identity can be identified. Cultural identity can be demonstrated through the historical factor, the linguistic factor, and the psychological factor. By historical factor, we mean someone's identity can be determined through his past achievements or his history. The linguistic factor, on the other hand, stands for the language someone speaks. The language someone speaks determines his identity. More than 40 native languages have been spoken in Africa since ancient times till date. Thirdly, the psychological factor stands for the different ways or manners in which man reflects things or reasons. The Africans have a different way of thinking of the Europeans. Furthermore, from my own point of view, the names you bear also greatly contribute to the demonstration of our cultural identity. Even our mother continent, Africa, has a name. The name Al-Kebulan is the ancient name of Africa. Al-Kebulan meaning mother of mankind. That name is still a great aspect to demonstrate the origin of humanity. This is why people seek only to read their true history, to transmit their memory to their descendants. The Europeans told us that our ancestors added nothing to civilization, but their museums are filled with stolen treasures from Africa, such as Paleolithic stones from Tanzania. The Africans built huge buildings in Europe, such as the Stone Age. The Stone Age refers to the huge building found in England. I will then continue with the part of cultural identity. Cultural identity refers to different ways in which two or more types of cultures live together and express themselves. I will then send the speech to my mate to continue with part 4.
Greetings once more, honorable members of the jury. I'm going to be presenting on part 4, and part 4 comprises of chapter 16, 17 and 18. This chapter 16, 17 and 18 is talking about the African history, if the Africans have their own philosophy or if the Africans are having their own science. Firstly, we are going to be talking about the African history economically. Talking about this African history, we are going to see the economic activities of the Africans that they were carrying in their community before the arrival of the European in their territory. Before the arrival of the European in African territory, they were carrying out activities like fishing, farming, hunting that could sustain them. So therefore, civilization started in Africa. Another economic factor, we are going to see the trade, the means in which the African could trade with each other. They practice the trade by barter system, that the goods could be exchanged for another good. So therefore, before the European came into Africa, they had a means of surviving, of trading between one another. So therefore, civilization started in Africa. Now we are going to be talking about the social history of the Africans. Here we are going to be talking about the way the African worship their God. It means that before the arrival of the European, even though the European thought that the Africans were backwards, they were not civilized, but they had their own way of worshiping God. It wasn't as if they were pagans. They were not pagans. They were worshiping their gods by offering libation, offering sacrifices in order to communicate with their gods, and all their problems that they had could be solved. So therefore, the Africans had their own civilization. Now we are going to be talking about the educational aspects. The Africans could teach their children like the old could teach the youth. This can be seen how they can gather the children during the evening beside the fire. They'll tell them a story about something that happened in the village, and after that story is being told to the children, they'll tell them the moral lesson of the story. They'll tell them what to do and what not to do. So therefore, the African had their own means of educating their children. Now we are going to be talking about the science aspect of the African. The African have their science. This can be seen through their traditional medicine that they could use to treat themselves from their illnesses. When someone is sick during these days in the African could use some grasses, some herbs to treat the person from his or her sickness that he's suffering from. Even when the European came to Africa, they took their source, the source of their medicine that are producing up to today is coming out from Africa. So therefore, scientifically, civilization started in Africa. Thank you. My colleague is going to give the conclusion.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we will go further into concluding this program. To conclude, our main focus was to come up with the various ideas that demonstrate the fact that civilization began in Africa and not in Europe. To conclude, the above arguments such as origin of humanity, evolution of societies, definition of cultural identity involving historical, cultural and psychological factors demonstrate the fact that testify the fact that civilization began in Africa. All these were invented in Africa by some members of the Africans at that moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa was a very great continent. Our own humble opinion out of this our conclusion is that we call on all the members of the society to maintain the culture and past history good deeds that was done in the past, and up to date it is still practice that they should maintain it. Also maintain the spirit of communalism that brings the African members together in unity and thus making them to constitute their own philosophy. If any effort is put to modernize the civilization of the Africans, we will be very grateful, joyful, and in fact for this. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you once more for your kind attention. Thank you.
You guys talk about civilization that began in Africa. It began in Africa, yes. So can you be precise on one aspect that is in what were the various aspects of African civilization? I want you to cite just 2 aspects of African civilization.
We are going to be talking about the political organization or the political structure of the African, how they were being ruled by the native rulers, how they were organized from hierarchy, from the top to the lowest. Another aspect I'm also going to give you the fact that the African had their own way of educating their people, meaning that the African had their education. Thank you.
Based on education in Africa as an aspect of civilization, you talk of the fact that Africans, before the arrival of the Europeans, used to gather their children as a family, tell stories in the evening. Which type of education was that?
It's oral.
Oral education. When you talk of oral education, I don't really understand. But I will say that that type of education is known as informal education. Please, that is off now. I'll pass the microphone to the person.
I will, first of all, like to indicate certain things in their work so that they can do the corrections. You will go to part 2, that's page 8. Yeah, you say laws governing the evolution of society. I want one of you to read the sentence that follows. Page 8.
Yes. Part 2. Talks about the laws governing the evolution of societies. Mother of in history in societies of AMP and the Greek city-states.
Okay, according to you, is it correct?
So I'm sorry for some error typing.
Okay, page 9, please. Then you take the first sentence on that different revolution history. You correct that. You say the civilizer. Yeah, okay. So,
the correction is civilization usually down.
Okay, just. So I will have just 2 questions for you. The first question is, 2 African countries survived European colonization. Can you name them, please?
Please, the question again.
2 African countries survived European colonization. Okay, that is Liberia and Ethiopia. I want to see building on their own culture and civilization, meaning they did not have European colonization destroying their culture or like others. Building now on their own culture and civilization, are they different from the other countries that suffered European colonization? Many have they developed, building on their own culture and civilization? Have they developed more than the other countries that suffered European colonization?
So please, can you repeat the question more clearly for our understanding?
if I understand the member of jury, he's bringing out the fact that you have mainly demonstrated to us that Africa had a civilization. Africa had a civilization. We say yes. But Africa at the end was colonized and another civilization imposed. Other continents like Asia, India in Asia, Singapore and the rest also experienced colonization. Has this civilization that Africa had so much and cherished, and you cherish, has it helped in developing Africa?
Taking the case of these foreign countries that do not suffer colonization.
So, I'm going to attempt this question. Countries that did not suffer European colonization, let me say that since they never suffered the European colonization, they were still carrying out their civilization that was there before the European colonization. It means that they continue with their civilization system before the colonization of the Europeans. Why they also suffered the European colonization, accepted the European civilization. Thank you.
Sir, according to me, countries that were being colonized by the Europeans suffered from colonization than countries that were not being colonized. This was because before the Europeans came to colonize territories in Africa, their aim was not to civilize Africa. Their aim was not even to make them to grow. Their aim was to just come and extract what they needed. Whereas colonies that were not being colonized by the Europeans were civilized, they were growing because there was no power that was extracting any of their mineral.
Europeans came with their culture, introduced in Africa, in fact imposed on us. And Africans have some aspect of their culture which maybe still survive up to today. But we realize that because we are working here with African culture and civilization and introduction to modern society, which means that there are some African culture which if we use and bring it to the modern society will develop better than taking the European civilization and culture. I want you to actually give us some aspect of those African culture that you think if we bring and actually develop on them today, it will make Africa to grow faster or develop faster than the European culture that we inherited.
To attempt your question, one can talk of traditional medicine. Rather than us going to hospitals and taking drugs which we don't even know their whereabouts, it's better to take herbs which we know where they are from, where they what our medicines are being made of, rather than going to the hospitals and taking drugs we don't even know. So one can say that we can actually base our attention and belief on traditional medicine rather than talking of European civilization, which is all about hospitals.
I myself also have another aspect. This is talking about the traditional dress of the Africans. Now we can base our mind precisely on the Bamenda. We can see even Africans that are out of the country to present day, they still look for everything possible to be wearing their traditional attires, the African traditional attires, which even attracts some Europeans out there that are even interested in buying these traditional wares. So with this, therefore, the traditional dress of the African can be another aspect to civilization in the modern world today. Thank you.
Yes, the candidates, you people tried your best to present, but I want to give some aspects. This exercise is not only remaining at the level of just talking about civilization. This exercise is an exercise that empowers us to see that there is more to do in educational ladder. Therefore, the presentation here
that you did in terms of the book, there are some errors in it. For example, your title, after the title, you presented the next page. That is when you presented the members of the group. When you presented the members of the group, that is where you presented the biography. Then you go to the table of content. We don't organize expose or topics like that. Is it clear? Your name, the presentation of the members was supposed to be at the first page. I want to make it very clear. When they see the title, they are supposed to see those who are exposing at the first page. But now, just simple, let me ask just a small, brief question. Can the Africa return back to their initial state?
Attempting to the question, one can say yes. If books like Civilization of Barbarism, written by Cheikh and Diop, are written more in our society, many people are going to read these books and know the advantages of their African culture. So therefore, it will be very easy for the Africans to return back to their culture.
And evaluate the various points that are jotted for evaluation. We want to thank you so much. But remember that this is an academic exercise and we appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Nous appelons l'élève Guépi Sandra et l'élève Kefa Karel, tous de la terminale A4, qui vont exposer sur le thème Société étatique de l'Afrique noire précoloniale et leur unité culturelle.
Bonsoir différents. Chers honorables membres du jury, différents invités, bon après-midi. Merci monsieur le président du jury de nous avoir passé la parole. Le but de notre présence devant vous cet après-midi, c'est pour vous présenter notre travail à propos du Prix Cheikh Anta Diop, qui est bien sûr la deuxième édition lancée par le fondateur du collège bilingue et intellectuel, M. Charles Panka. Je vais à présent passer la parole à ma collègue Kefa Karel, qui va nous présenter le plan détaillé et l'introduction en premier point. Je remercie ma collègue de m'avoir passé la parole. Je vais à présent présenter le plan détaillé de notre travail. Premièrement, nous avons l'introduction. Ensuite, grand 1, présentation des sociétés étatiques. Petit 1 du grand 1, les empires. Petit 2 du grand 1, le déclin des empires. En grand 2, nous avons l'organisation des sociétés de l'Afrique précoloniale. En petit 2 du grand 2, nous avons l'organisation socio-politique. En petit 2 du grand 2, nous avons l'organisation économique. En grand 3, nous avons l'unité culturelle des Africains. En petit 1 du grand 3, nous avons la ressemblance des langues et des rites traditionnels. En petit 2 du grand 3, nous avons la région. Ensuite, nous avons la conclusion et enfin la bibliographie. Introduction. L'Afrique noire précoloniale est l'un des ouvrages de Cheikh Anta Diop, source principale de notre travail. Il est un historien et anthropologue sénégalais ayant étudié les origines de la race humaine et de la culture africaine précoloniale. Il est considéré comme l'un des plus grands historiens africains du XXe siècle. Il adopte un point de vue spécifiquement noir africain face à la vision de certains auteurs de l'époque selon laquelle les Africains sont des peuples sans passé. Il naît le 29 décembre 1923 dans une région de Diop. En 1946, il passe s'installer à Paris pour suivre des études supérieures de mathématiques dans l'idée de devenir ingénieur aéronautique. Il décède enfin le 7 février 1986 à Dakar, au Sénégal. Cet ouvrage nous a permis d'en ressortir comme thème les sociétés étatiques de l'Afrique noire précoloniale et ses unités culturelles. Ce thème soulève le problème de savoir
quelles sont les institutions politiques de l'Afrique noire précoloniale et les unités culturelles. Ne serait-il pas mieux que nous fassions revenir les sociétés étatiques de l'Afrique précoloniale pour remplacer les États d'aujourd'hui? Notre devoir constituera de présenter d'abord les sociétés étatiques, ensuite l'organisation des sociétés de l'Afrique précoloniale et enfin l'unité culturelle des Africains. Je vais à présent passer la parole à ma copine qui va nous présenter enfin notre devoir.
Grande présentation des sociétés étatiques. Petit 1, les empires. Le Ghana est un empire formé d'une région aurifère du Haut-Sénégal centré sur Gaziaou, Garantel et Iresni. Du temps de Bekri, la ville périphérique d'Alouken était une marche frontière à l'est, gouvernée par le fils de l'empereur de Fembessi, oncle du Toukan Mine régnant. Les populations qui vivaient alors au pays étaient sous la domination stricte des Noirs. D'après Prix, l'empire du Ghana était défendu par 200 000 guerriers, dont 40 000 archers. Sa puissance et sa réputation qui retentissaient jusqu'à Bagdad en Orient n'étaient donc pas illusoires durant 1250 ans. Des empereurs noirs se sont succédés sur le trône d'un pays vaste et l'Europe, sans qu'il soit démontré par les attaques extérieures ou des tensions internes. La capitale était déjà une ville cosmopolite internationale. Cet empire était à la portée du monde extérieur par le commerce. Il jouissait déjà d'une existence internationale, dont hériteront en la renforçant les empires futurs du Mali et du Songhai. L'empire du Mali. Le Mali est un pays dont la capitale est Bamako. Ses frontières s'étendent de Ouaga jusqu'à l'océan Atlantique et du Sahara jusqu'à la forêt dense. D'après Kaldoum, l'empereur du Mali régnait sur tout le Sahara. La capitale du Mali avait également son quartier arabe, ses mosquées, ses jurisprudents, son consulte, son cimetière musulman, etc. L'empereur, le Mansa Kanka Moussa, fit un pèlerinage retentissant à la Mecque 1324-1327. En parlant des frontières du Mali qui s'étendent jusqu'à l'océan Atlantique, les Africains avaient déjà l'habitude de voyager en Afrique du Nord et de s'y installer quelquefois pour étudier. L'activité internationale au Mali se renforçait ainsi. La puissance du Mali était réellement efficace au point où les Arabes sollicitaient les aides militaires. Autrefois, les rapports qui existaient n'étaient que des rapports de maîtres et d'esclaves. Les marches frontières de l'empire tel que Oualata, à la lisière du Sahara, étaient gouvernées par des phares bas-noirs qui percevaient des marchandises dans le pays. Pour que les marchands commencent à se livrer à leurs activités, ils devaient d'abord s'adresser à eux pour pouvoir remplir des formalités administratives avant de pouvoir se livrer à leurs activités de commerçants. L'empire du Songhai. La capitale politique de l'empire du Songhai est la ville de Gao. Cependant, la ville de Tombouctou est le véritable centre économique et culturel de l'empire qui s'étendait depuis l'est du Niger jusqu'à l'océan Atlantique avec des effectifs armés levés à la hâte pour combattre Djoudé qui était de 12 500 cavaliers et 30 000 fantaiseux. Le Songhai hérite alors dans la renommée internationale du Mali. Les Touaregs qui avaient investi Tombouctou était chassé par Eli, encore appelé Ali Ber ou Ali le Grand. Après les Mandingues de 1434 à 1468, le chef Touareg a qui s'appuie à Bori ou à Lata, sans livrer bataille à la vue de son nid Ali. Il amena avec lui tous les jurisconsultes et les membres du clergé qui étaient favorables à la domination des Touaregs. Ces derniers s'étaient livrés aux pires exactions pendant les 34 qu'avait duré leur domination. Petit 2, le le déclin des empires. L'empire du Ghana s'effondra à partir du XIIe siècle.
Il vous reste 7 minutes 40
Après Jésus-Christ, suite à des sécheresses et aux guerres civiles à l'ouverture d'autres routes commerciales. À la montée du royaume social vers 1180-1237, puis l'empire du Mali. Après la mort de Mansa Suleiman, des querelles de succession affaiblissent l'empire. Il semble pas avoir mené d'expéditions guerrières ni effectué la moindre conquête. Son pèlerinage à la Mecque marque à la fois l'apogée et le déclin de la puissance de l'empire du Mali. Mansa Moussa est attaqué par les royaumes aussi, les Touaregs qui brûlaient Tombouctou en 1421, puis le Songhai qui fait succession en 1464. Dans la seconde moitié du XVIe siècle, l'empire Songhai doit cependant faire face aux invasions marocaines. En 1591, à la bataille de Tonzibi, l'armée Songhai est défaite par celle du sultan marocain qui entraîne la chute de l'empire. Grande 3 unités culturelles des Africains. La ressemblance des langues et des rites traditionnels est petite. Plusieurs pays africains ont une ressemblance de langues et de rites traditionnels, cela vaillant de peuple en peuple. Comme peuple ayant une ressemblance des langues nationales au Cameroun, nous avons les peuples bantous, constitués des Bétis Yaoundé, des Makadouala, sont des tribus dans lesquelles on trouve des mots qui signifient la même chose avec des mêmes tons. Les peuples semi-bantous, Bamileke, Bamoun et Tika, est un groupe de peuples dans lequel nous trouvons des ethnies qui ont une ressemblance de langue. Exemple, Zap, qui signifie légumes, Munga, le so, le Kingamamik, sont des mots qui se disent en Yemba chez les Tchans et en Gomba chez les Bouddhas, etc. en signifiant la même chose avec le même ton. Les Soudanais, composés des Foubé, Mafa, Arabe, Choua, Munda, Massam, Moussoum, est un peuple dans lequel on retrouve aussi une ressemblance de langue en commun entre différents ethnies. Exemple, Assalam alaikum signifie bonjour en langue arabe chez les Égyptiens et aussi en Foubé chez les Tchadjiens. Tout comme Salam alaikum est une expression arabe utilisée pour l'entrée des maisons qui se dit en Égypte et dans le Grand Nord. Étude de la religion. Dans la période précoloniale et de nos jours, des pratiques religieuses étant pareilles partout en Afrique, parmi ces pratiques religieuses, nous avons le totémisme, qui est la croyance à un totem, qui était une pratique adoptée par les pays africains. Traditionnellement, les totems servaient à raconter l'histoire des familles et des clans autochtones et à préserver le récit des événements historiques importants. Ce totem créa alors des liens entre les animaux ou végétaux et les groupes ou individus du clan. Le polythéisme désigne une doctrine religieuse qui admet l'existence de plusieurs dieux. Cette religion de l'Égypte antique comportait de nombreuses divinités, dieux ou déesses comme Osiris, dieu des morts, Isis, Horus et Seth. Je vais à présent passer la parole à ma coéquipière pour nous présenter la conclusion. Je remercie ma coéquipière de m'avoir passé la parole. En conclusion, la société étatique de l'Afrique noire précoloniale et ses unités culturelles est un terme tiré de l'Afrique noire précoloniale de Cheikh Anta Diop. Elle nous a permis de démontrer que dans la période précoloniale, au lieu des États qui existent aujourd'hui, existaient plutôt les empires qui étaient vraiment bien organisés. Alors, nous pensons qu'il serait mieux que nos dirigeants africains transforment cette Afrique actuelle pour qu'elle soit comme celle d'avant. Preuve que lorsque nous sommes dans des situations critiques, nous partons de la ville pour le village, demander de l'aide aux ancêtres, de nous venir en aide, ou encore nous pratiquons certains rites traditionnels pour être libérés de ces maux. La bibliographie. Notre travail a été tiré des sources suivantes. L'Afrique noire précoloniale, Google. Nous remercions nous avons passé la parole.